Hello, I'm Timothy Beck, and I'll be discussing Mark Nolls' chapter on Christian Republicanism from his book entitled America's God, From Jonathan Edwards to Abraham Lincoln. His chapter explores the developing relationship between Christianity and republicanism leading up to and after the American Revolution. This topic interested me because it always seemed a bit odd to have such a strong relationship between Christianity and revolutionary rhetoric, especially in light of Romans chapter 13. In chapter 13 of Romans, Paul exhorts Christians to obey those of authority over you. He states, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore one must be in subjection, not only to God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed." And in the context of this verse, he's actually speaking of the Roman government that is over them, which is far more invasive and strict than the British government over the colonial Americans. So it seems to me that political radicalism is incongruent with Christianity, yet Mark Nolls shows how the symbiotic relationship developed. Prior to the 1740s, there was some radical political elements mixed in with colonial Christianity, because many of the colonials had fled religious persecution in England and Europe. But there was not a strong connection, and in general, they held political ideals consistent with Romans chapter 13. But as England continued to engage in war against Papist France, anti-Catholic rhetoric united political republicanism with Protestant fear of a centralized Catholic power. This distrust of the French monarchy and belief in the superiority of the English parliamentary system eventually paved the way for agitators like Thomas Paine to harness Christian language and orthodoxy in his work Common Sense to frame their struggle in religious terms. This unlikely marriage of Christianity and republicanism requires both sides to utilize the same words such as vice and virtue, but hold somewhat different meanings depending upon their belief structure. This ultimately altered both elements, but as de Tocqueville stated in 1830, the character of the country combined two perfectly distinct elements that elsewhere have made war with each other, but which in America they have succeeded in incorporating somehow into another and combining marvelously. I mean to speak of the spirit of religion and the spirit of freedom. So, by this, America was able to combine both Christianity and republicanism into a united idea. Thank you so much for listening.